Good evening. I'm Teresa Skubic, and this is Forum Daily for Monday, April 21st. We begin tonight with the Vatican's announcement of the death of Pope Francis on Monday at the age of 88. History's first Latin American pontiff charmed the world with his humble style and concern for the poor. Francis, who suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of one lung removed as a young man, was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on February 14th for a respiratory crisis that he developed into double pneumonia. He was the first pontiff to apologize for the church's role in Canada's residential school system during his trip here in 2022, something he called a deplorable system.
I did not come as a tourist. I have come as a brother to discover firsthand the good and bad fruit borne by members of the local Catholic family over the course of the years. I have come in a spirit of penance to express my heartfelt pain, the heartfelt pain of the Church at the wrong inflicted on you by not just a few Catholics who supported oppressive and unjust policies. I have come as a pilgrim, despite my physical limitations, to take further steps forward with you and for you. I do this so that progress may be made in the search for truth, so that the processes of healing and reconciliation may continue, and so that seeds of hope can keep being sown for future generations, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, who desire to live together in harmony as brothers and sisters.
There are nearly 11 million Catholics in Canada, making it the country's most popular organized religion. Tanya Granick-Allen, host of Counterpoint and former board of director with the Catholic Civil Rights League of Canada, joined us to discuss the legacy that Pope Francis leaves behind.
Pope Francis was definitely a different pope. He was a Jesuit, which was very well welcomed, but he was definitely a controversial figure. While he was very generous and a huge champion of social justice causes, including, the poor, the suffering, the refugees, the oppressed, the lower socioeconomic citizens of the world. There were also concerns with some of his leadership. For example, the clamping down on the traditional Latin Mass, which drew the ire of many traditional Catholics throughout the world, including those from Africa to America. So that was definitely a concern for many Catholics. And again, while he was a huge champion of the poor and the downtrodden, and that was definitely a huge part of his legacy, there were concerns, and a very big champion of the pro-life cause. But then on the other hand, there were concerns about some of the appointments that were made that sort of conflicted with his ethos.
We also asked Tanya to unpack what happens now that the Pope has passed away.
So what we do know is that approximately 2:35 in Rome time, the Pope was announced to have passed. That is the time of his death. And of course, today is Easter Monday, a very holy day. We just completed the Easter Triduum with the culmination of Easter Sunday, the most holiest time of year for Catholics and Christians worldwide. So this is quite poignant that today is the day that the Pope has passed. So what happened is the Camerlengo, who's currently represented by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, he is the one who officially has declared that the Pope has passed. So he's an American cardinal and he resides in the Vatican, and his job is to verify that the Pope is indeed dead. So he would have gone in, verified personally, and then declared it. And that is why the press release from the Vatican included his name, because he is that special role called the Camerlengo. And so right now at this point, he would have taken possession of the ring that the Holy Father wears, which is called the Ring of the Fisherman. And he will now take possession also of the Pope's will. And now we start the process of planning for the Requiem Mass, the funeral for the Pope. What we know factually right now is that on Wednesday of this week, so that's 2 days after he passes, the Pope's remains, his body, will be transferred. And I think what we will see happen is there will start a several-day period of mourning and visitation for the Pope. I suspect his funeral will happen in about a week's time. When exactly, that has yet to be determined. So Pope Francis is the 266th Pope. And now, after the funeral, again, this will take about a week to 2 weeks. You'll see in about a couple weeks' time, there will start the College of Cardinals who will meet and gather to elect a new Pope. But that is several days away. And right now, Catholics around the world are really just focusing on mourning the pontiff and remembering his legacy and praying. Most importantly, Catholics are praying for the repose of his soul and offering many prayers and masses for such.
And reaction is pouring in from around the world to news of the Pope's passing. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said, "We are saying goodbye to a great man and a great shepherd," and pledged that his teaching and legacy will not be lost. And French President Emmanuel Macron posted on X saying, quote, "From Buenos Aires to Rome, Pope Francis wanted the church to bring joy and hope to the poorest, for it to unite humans among themselves and with nature. May this hope forever outlast him." Prime Minister Carney, while campaigning in PEI, spoke on the Pope's passing, calling him a voice of moral clarity.
I want to speak of someone who just passed and who deeply and profoundly touched the lives of billions. Pope Francis was a voice of moral clarity, spiritual courage, and boundless compassion. He was, in many respects, the world's conscience, never hesitating to challenge the powerful on behalf of the vulnerable. Above all, His Holiness understood and taught that value in the market must never eclipse the values of society. He wrote about the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, reminding us that ecological degradation and social injustice are deeply entwined. During his papal visit to Canada in 2022, his apology on residential schools was a crucial step in moving the Church forward in its journey towards meaningful reconciliation. And one parable he shared in about a decade ago has consistently guided my thinking. He compared humanity to wine, rich, diverse, full of spirit, and the market to grappa, distilled, intense, and at times disconnected. And he called on us to reintegrate human values into our economic lives.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also offered his condolences to the Catholic community this morning.
Let me first offer my condolences to Catholics all around the world on the loss of Pope Francis. His role is, of course, at the center of the Catholic Church, and there have been countless millions of Catholics and non-Catholics that have been inspired by his leadership in faith and other domains. And our prayers are with all Catholics as they lay to rest the head of the Catholic Church. And we are in solidarity in remembering him and honoring his contributions.
Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives released their plan to deal with the housing crisis, which includes a pledge to build 2.3 million homes over a 5-year stretch.
Canada's building about 245,000 homes a year right now. Our Conservative plan to axe the federal sales tax will increase that by 30,000 homes per year. Second, we are going to incentivize municipalities to cut their development taxes by 50,000 homes. It's $50,000. When you cut the sales tax and the municipal taxes on home building by a total of $100,000 a home, you stimulate well over 50,000 additional home builds to bring it up to about 300,000 homes per year. Next, we will build on this increased construction by requiring municipalities permit 15% more homes per year as a condition of getting federal funding. When you compound that 15% on the 300,000 homes, then by the year, this will get Canada to over 535,000 new homes being built in year 5, at a total of 2 million homes by 2030. But we'll go further. Within 100 days, we'll identify 15% of federal land that is optimal for home building, and we will pre-zone it and sell it off for home building, requiring that builders use the land to build affordable, privately owned homes. Yes, I know Liberals will gasp, They don't want anybody to own a home. They think everybody should live in a government dwelling. We will be selling the land so that Canadians can buy homes that belong to them and that give them the pride of home ownership and the home equity. The Globe and Mail has already identified hundreds of thousands of unused and unidentified thousands of unused and underutilized sites that will unlock at least 288,000 homes for Canadians. When you add it all up, it gets you 2.3 million homes for Canadians in 5 years.
All right, up next, we'll return to the campaign trail with updates on the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP leaders. Don't go anywhere. Forum Daily will be right back after these messages. Anyone hoping to cast an early ballot in next Monday's election has until the end of day today to visit an advanced polling station. Elections Canada announced preliminary estimates that show nearly 2 million electors voted Friday, the first day of advanced polls. Representatives of the nonpartisan agency said that's a record turnout. During the 2021 federal election, almost 5.8 million voters turned out for advanced polls. A total of 17.2 million voters cast their ballots in that election, representing a voter turnout of 62.6%. Our correspondent Wyatt Sharp has more on the significance of the record turnout.
Generally speaking, when you think about advanced voting, you think of people who are just so eager and excited to get out and cast their vote and make their voices heard, which oftentimes those are people who have felt apathetic towards the previous government. But this is a bit of a different situation, given Mark Carney is a completely new leader. He's not an incumbent, and a lot of people want to get out. They want to express their support for him, given his kind of opposition to Donald Trump and his skill set to hit back with some of these tariffs and some of the economic challenges that are being posed kind of subsequently from some of these tariffs. The Conservatives, though, are obviously painting it as if this is a good thing for them for some of the reasons that I outlined just there. And, Pierre Poilievre, as the Conservative leader, has been in the GTA today. He's going to be back in the GTA tomorrow as well, really kind of courting votes that, a few months ago, people would have thought he had, 100% kind of in the bag. Whereas now, going forward, Mark Carney has kind of recaptured some of these, previously Liberal Party incumbent held seats. And so that's kind of where the dynamic is at. And for the NDP as well, I was just speaking with Jagmeet Singh, of course, the NDP leader. He's really concerned with this idea of strategic voting as well. And the entirety of the party is, because right now in a lot of ridings where you have kind of it neck and neck between the Liberals and the Conservatives, the NDP candidate is kind of the spoiler there, so to speak. They are what could make or break the difference. And so my question to Jagmeet Singh was, what is your message to people in those areas who don't want a Conservative to get elected? And he didn't explicitly say to vote Liberal, but he almost hinted at it in kind of what he was saying. And so that kind of speaks to the dynamics and some of the tensions that are at play right now. But again, going back to advanced voting, this is something that is very historic. The record number that we see as it relates to people who actually went out and wanted to express themselves, which could suggest perhaps that we could see higher voter turnout in the actual election itself on election day. And this is the first election in a while where we've actually seen this much money spent. We've seen a lot of money spent on advertising dollars from all of the campaigns and from all of the party leaders, which maybe is why we're seeing this high voter turnout. But again, not very often do we have such a high level of media coverage on one specific issue. In this case, obviously, the tariffs and kind of the economic threats that are being posed from that. And so perhaps Canadians kind of feeling as if they just want to get out there and, again, make their voices heard in this election.
Liberal leader Mark Carney framed his fiscal and spending plan over the weekend in terms of a crisis, or as he put it, the most significant crisis of our lifetimes.
We need that mandate because as a country, we're going to have to step up. We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes. We're facing that because of President Trump's unjustified, unwarranted, unwise tariffs and his threats to our sovereignty. When I spoke to him, I told him I categorically reject any attempt to weaken Canada. Any attempt. I'm going to bring I'll bring that. I might have to borrow that stick. I might bring the stick down to Mar-a-Lago. We reject any attempt to wear us down, because what they're trying to do is to break us so that America can own us. Never. That will never happen. That will never happen.
And shortly after that, Pierre Poilievre, at his own announcement in British Columbia, dismissed Mr. Carney's plan as one that Canada can't afford.
After the lost Liberal decade, Mark Carney launched his platform today promising $130 billion in new inflationary spending that will drive up taxes, food, and housing costs. Amazingly, Mr. Carney plans to run even bigger inflationary deficits than Justin Trudeau had already budgeted. Together, the previously budgeted Trudeau deficits, combined with the new spending Mr. Carney announced today, will mean $250 billion of new inflationary debt added on the backs of Canadians in a fourth Liberal term. This inflationary spending means higher taxes and higher costs of living and a weaker dollar. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. You need change so you can afford food and housing and live on a safe street again with a new Conservative government. Bloomberg reports that Mr. Carney has even gone beyond Justin Trudeau, abandoning even the weak fiscal guideposts, and Bloomberg is now predicting worsening fiscal position if the Liberals are re-elected to a fourth term. One Carney-friendly economist on Twitter said that this Liberal platform is a, quote, spendorama with even bigger deficits than Freeland's that just go on forever. And he said, I was hoping, and I'm quoting here, I was hoping, this is from a Liberal commentator, I was hoping Carney would pull the Liberals back to the centre with a focus on fiscal discipline. It's not to be. That's a fancy way of saying that Mark Carney's Liberals are even more costly than Justin Trudeau's Liberals. And they're all the same Liberals, the same Liberal ministers, same Liberal advisors, same Liberal promises, same costly Liberal failures.
Liberal leader Mark Carney ramped up attacks on Pierre Poilievre, saying he has achieved more in 9 days than Mr. Poilievre has imagined in his decades in politics. Mr. Carney added that Mr. Poilievre has, quote, got his pension.
In 9 days in government before we called this election, we did more than Pierre Poilievre has imagined in all his decades in politics. I counted that up. And no, Pierre, yeah. I'm not sure he has an imagination. He's just mimicking Donald. He's mimicking Donald. You know, what we've been doing this last month is to begin to show what we could do if you send us back.
And the Conservatives still haven't released a cost platform outlining their vision for the country and how they would pay for their multi-billion-dollar commitments. Speaking to reporters this morning, Mr. Poilievre was asked specifically when the party will release their platform.
We've been calling for an election for the last 2 years, and yet you're now the last major party leader to release a costed platform. We haven't seen one yet. More than 2 million people have already cast a ballot in the advance polls, and there's only a week left in this election. What's the holdup with the platform? Are you having trouble making the math work for this one?
No, tomorrow we'll have a platform for all eyes to see, which will bring change to Canada. They will axe taxes, unleash home building, resource development, lock up criminals, secure our borders, and bring home the country that we knew and love. That country has a big choice to make. Yes, on Saturday, just hours before Easter, when Mark Carney thought no one was listening, he came forward with a platform that has $130 billion more spending than Justin Trudeau had already promised. So he's now $130 billion more expensive than Trudeau. And that will mean higher taxes and inflation. It will mean a serious risk to the future of our already weak economy. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term of rising taxes and inflation and crime. We need a change with a new Conservative government that has a truly costed platform that will cut waste axe taxes, unleash home building, lock up criminals, and bring home the country that we love.
And yesterday, Mr. Poilievre dodged questions about whether he would repeal the federal government's handgun ban, a measure brought in to tamp down on the diversion of legal firearms into the hands of bad actors.
So first of all, let's be clear, handguns are, after the lost Liberal decade, are legal today, legal to own, and easier to get than ever before. In fact, criminals are able to get handguns everywhere they go. In fact, we have more handguns in Canada after the lost Liberal decade than we ever have. The problem, according to the police, the problem is illegal guns coming in from the United States of America. So that's why the police believe with my approach in life sentences for handgun and other firearm traffickers. They believe in securing the border against traffickers and in mandatory prison sentences for those who use guns in violent crime. The police have said that the current Liberal policies just prevent off-duty police officers and military veterans from practicing their craft without going after the criminals who caused the crime.
Coming up after the break, I'll be sitting down with Brendan Caldwell from Caldwell Securities Limited to discuss how best to support innovation in Canada without compromising framework that protects Canadians. We'll have this story and more news after the break. The new Democratic Party is promising to raise about $94.5 billion by taxing the extremely wealthy. A plan designed to help finance tens of billions in new spending, deliver a tax cut for workers, and bolster and expand Canada's healthcare system.
It's focused on the people who build this country, and it starts with healthcare. We'll guarantee access to a family doctor or primary care team by 2030. We'll hire more healthcare workers, and some say it can't be done, that there's no way to get everyone a family doctor, but we know that's not true. We'll create residencies for qualified, internationally trained doctors already living in Canada, so they can get to help, working to help people instead of waiting on the sidelines. We'll stop the slow creep of for-profit care. We'll launch universal pharmacare, starting with free diabetes medication and birth control, and expanding to cover essential medicines by year's end.
After the announcement, Jagmeet Singh was asked about the policies he would want in the next federal budget.
When the House returns, one of the first items on the agenda, I assume, will be a federal budget. What is the one item in your platform that you can tell us that the next government will have to implement or put in their budget for you to either support it or to make their lives less of a hell in the next parliament?
Well, we're certainly going to give them hell. There's no question about that. That's what we do. We're going to make sure they're always putting people first. But I could break it down into two. I know you asked for one, but it's two really. One is affordability, and the other one is healthcare. And in affordability, we want to see measures that make life more affordable. That means bringing down the price of groceries. We've talked about a price cap on food essentials. This has worked in other countries. We want to see it happen here to stop the corporate grocery stores from ripping off Canadians. We want to see a price cap on food essentials. So that's really important. And then on housing and on homes, this is the other big stress for Canadians. We want to see real action to bring down the cost of homes, to build homes that people can actually afford. So those affordability, and then the second piece is healthcare. In this coming, the storm that we're in right now, with the threats from Donald Trump and the trade war, we want to make sure that there are no cuts to our healthcare. So in this next budget, we're going to fight back against any cuts.
As Canada navigates a rapidly changing global economy, a growing debate is emerging over how best to support innovation without compromising the regulatory frameworks that protect Canadians. From technology and healthcare to clean energy and finance, businesses across the country are calling for a more flexible, forward-thinking approach, one that fosters growth and competitiveness while still upholding the public good. So, where does Canada go from here? We're now joined by Brendan Caldwell, Director of Caldwell Securities Limited, to unpack this. Brendan, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Teresa. This should be a good one.
So, to start us off, how does Canada's current regulatory environment hinder or help entrepreneurial growth? And what immediate changes are needed to foster a more business friendly atmosphere?
Well, I mean, I'm talking my position a bit, Teresa, which means that I'm in the business largely of public companies. And I do see the ability to create and build public companies as being a key solution. I mean, a lot of the challenges Canada has is that the measures that need to be implemented are largely in the hands of provincial governments. Securities and the raising of capital in public markets is something under provincial jurisdiction. So is healthcare and so many other areas. And each province seems to want to have its own solution rather than a true national solution. But I think first things first, if you want to grow the Canadian economy and hire more people and develop more relevant businesses and opportunities, there has to be access to capital. There has to be relatively easier ways to raise money in the public markets. Ultimately, governments are not the most efficient way of delivering any service. 2 clips ago, I think you had the current leader of the New Democratic Party talking about how government is going to do this and government's going to do that, and they were going to keep corporations from ripping off consumers. I think that was a quote. As though businesses and real people are at war with each other or anathema to each other. In fact, businesses are made up of real people. They serve real people. They do business with real people, and they provide in a responsive way the products and services that real people need. The challenge Canada has is to be able to raise the capital to make those businesses effective and enable them to grow is much more difficult than our neighbors to the south. So if they could figure out a way to deregulate one area, it would be in the raising and issuance and of public capital and making it easier for entrepreneurs to get their businesses to critical mass.
Now, Canadians pride themselves on our thriving social entrepreneurship. How can the Canadian government balance its social policies with the need to create an environment that attracts talent and encourages innovation in the private sector with these current shifting global relations?
Canada prides itself in social entrepreneurship. I think there are parts of Canada that pride itself in being socially minded. I think Canada in general prides itself in being, if we define ourselves against America as our raison d'etre in one way or one predominant way, it would be having more of a social safety net. And I don't think you'll find even the most conservative mainstream opinion leader saying no, we shouldn't help the poor, we shouldn't help the disadvantaged. But the question is whether government needs to be the answer to every single question, whether government is actually the best way of delivering it. Again, a clip you had on a moment or two ago was talking about how Jasmeet Singh would have a doctor for every Canadian by 2030, I believe he said. And at the same time, he said he's going to get rid of private healthcare in Canada. Well, given that 40, 50, 60 years of public healthcare have really stretched the ability of the public system to deliver a doctor for every human being, which if you're going to have a socialist system should be the minimum. Given that hasn't happened, I think there needs to be different thinking, and part of it probably is private healthcare, because that's a blended system that allows for, borrowing your phrase, social entrepreneurship, probably will end up with a better result because it gives a greater degree of flexibility and probably a lot less waste. So I think allowing the private sector to be involved in the solution, it's government's job to see things that are done well. They're not necessarily the government's job to do everything, because it's generally challenging for governments because of all the way that it's run, the bureaucracy, the size, and the lack of incentives, it's generally difficult for governments to run very effectively.
And do you think Canada can have long-term self-sustainability?
Oh, heavens, yes. Absolutely. I mean, there's still a reason with all our kvetching nationally about, it's not like it was in the old days, and it's so much more difficult now, both of which are true. It's still way better here than every other country on the face of the earth, which is why in the hundreds of thousands, millions, if we'd let them, people are coming to Canada, even with all of our challenges. So yes, I do think we need to get off our own backs and allow ourselves to have the opportunity to do what we're really good at. And, whether it's minerals or energy or financial services or technology, we have a lot of very promising industries that, if they had access to capital and a degree of reduced red tape and a greater degree of interprovincial cooperation, these are not enormous tasks to ask. But if we could get off our own backs, I think we do have the capacity to go from strength to strength.
And how can the average Canadian help enact change and support a pro-business mindset and culture?
Well, I think it does help to understand business. So I would say to everyone that it, well, I don't understand money or the money things. I know, I mean, I have a job because most people would rather have dental surgery than think about money. Most of us are half remembered arguments that our parents had about money. It's one of the great sources of social and marital stress. But I think it would behoove every Canadian to learn more about investing, to think about deploying their capital in public and private markets to the extent that they can. Because if we put capital to work, stock markets are the most democratic institution the world has ever come up with. They allow people to vote with their money. If you have a good idea as an entrepreneur and you have money as an investor, even if it's only $500 a month, you can invest in some of the best ideas your country has and help it to prosper and you along with it. So I would think education and thinking about public and private markets is a way of investing in your and Canada's future.
Brendan, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right, don't go anywhere. Coming up, we'll have more of today's top national and international headlines. More news right after the break. The Houthi rebels said early Monday that U.S. airstrikes targeting Yemen's capital killed 12 people and wounded 30 others. The deaths in Sana'a mark the latest in America's intensified campaign of strikes targeting the rebels. The U.S. military Central Command declined to answer questions about the strikes or discuss civilian casualties from its campaign. An Israeli investigation into the killings of 15 Palestinian medics last month by Israeli forces found professional failures, and a deputy commander will be fired.
Next to the Gaza emergency vehicles incident, the full findings are available from the IDF and their investigation. I won't repeat all of the findings here, but the bottom line of this incident is that it was a tragic and undesired result of a complex operational situation, as well as some serious faults in the operation of the forces on the ground. The IDF has expressed regret for harm to uninvolved civilians and reaffirmed its commitment to learning from the incident to prevent reoccurrence. In particular, regarding the protection of medical personnel in combat zones, the investigation's findings will be reviewed by the Military Prosecutor's Office. The IDF's Independent General Staff Investigation Mechanism conducted the thorough investigation, and it was based on a field reenactment, video surveillance, soldier interrogations, and intelligence reports. It found that the soldiers acted under pressure in a complex, high-risk environment. The force did not act indiscriminately. Importantly, no evidence was found of execution or desecration of bodies. The investigation found that the forces did not intentionally target medical personnel, but were focused on the immediate threats. You'll be well aware that this is not the first time, by any stretch of the imagination, that Hamas have used medical vehicles as getaway cars to transport weapons and for operational activity. So yes, The investigation found that errors were made in judgment and procedure, but they certainly do reflect Israel's commitment to accountability, even during war. So disciplinary action has been taken against the commander of the brigade, and the deputy commander of the Golani Patrol has been removed from his position due to his role in the incident.
At first, Israel claimed that the medics' vehicles did not have emergency signals on, but later retracted that claim after cell phone video was recovered. Video footage obtained from the incident shows the ambulance had lights flashing and logos visible when they pulled up to help another ambulance. A former spokesperson for Benjamin Netanyahu, Elon Levy, joined us from Israel for more on the investigation.
Yeah, the IDF has done exactly what you would expect a professional law-abiding army to do. It investigates. If there's a mistake, it says we messed up, and it holds the people responsible accountable. That is exactly what you expect. In wars, armies make mistakes. The question is how they deal with them. And armies make mistakes, especially when the enemy is trying to deliberately lure them into making mistakes. Let's understand the urban battlefield that Israel is fighting in, a place where Hamas deliberately fights out of civilian clothes, out of civilian buildings, even using ambulances to transport fighters and weapons. The commander on the ground made a mistake. But when you understand the operational reality on the ground, you can begin to understand how that mistake happened. There was a shootout with Hamas forces at the same spot an hour earlier. And then they see vehicles approaching them quickly, stopping suddenly next to the troops, and they see people jumping out of the cars. And they think that these are reinforcements from Hamas who have come to help the terrorists they were in with the shootout an hour earlier. So a tragic mistake, and one the IDF is committed to learning lessons from. Israel is fighting not only in a dense urban battlefield, but a dense information battlefield with a lot of fake information. They get swallowed by people who just want to believe the worst about Israel. And we saw a lot of fake reporting around this case. The IDF investigation, for example, found absolutely no evidence that they were executed at close quarters or that they were bound before or after their deaths. That simply never happened. But Israel is dealing with a reality in which Hamas and Palestinians in Gaza know that they can make anything up and people will eagerly swallow it. And that's why it's always important to wait for a professional investigation to be conducted and see what it finds. In this case, the IDF says, we made a mistake, we're holding those accountable, responsible for it, and we've forwarded the case onto the army lawyers to see if there is any further wrongdoing that needs to be investigated. Armies make mistakes. What matters is how they deal with them, and the IDF is dealing with it professionally.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reportedly created another signal messaging chat that included his wife and brother, where he shared similar details of a March military airstrike against Yemen's Houthi militants that were sent in another chain with Trump administration leaders. The New York Times reported the second chat on Sunday, and a person familiar with the contents and those who received the messages confirmed it to the Associated Press. The White House dismissed the report on Sunday evening, insisting that no classified information was shared. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in India for a 4-day visit as New Delhi looks to avoid American tariffs and negotiate a bilateral trade deal with Washington. Mr. Vance will meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the first day of his largely personal visit. The two leaders are expected to hold discussions on bilateral ties outlined in February, when Mr. Modi met U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. The U.S. is India's largest trading partner, and the two countries are now holding negotiations aiming to seal a bilateral trade agreement this year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of creating a, quote, impression of a ceasefire, saying that Russian forces continued attacks despite President Vladimir Putin's declaration of an Easter truce. Mr. Zelensky reported 59 instances of recent shelling and multiple drone strikes. Russia's defense ministry pointed the finger at Ukrainian forces, insisting they launched overnight attacks in the Donetsk region despite the ceasefire. Ukraine is offering to extend a truce for 30 days, but said his country would respond based on the battlefield situation. Canada and Australia have come to an agreement to avoid a potential scuffle over a spread that many Aussies like on toast and crackers. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese thanked Prime Minister Mark Carney and his team for helping to end Vegemite Gate, ensuring that a Toronto cafe can once again have jars of the product on its shelves.
I do want to talk about a trade issue as well. I have an update on Vegemite Gate that occurred from Canada. This little product here is a proud Australian product, and I can report after the discussions that my government has had with the government of Canada, and I want to thank Mark Carney and his office and his team for ensuring that for the Australian cafe owner Leighton Walters can once again have Vegemite back in his cafe, back on the agenda. This is a win for Australian industry, but it's also a win for those people in Canada who get to enjoy this wonderful product that is so much a part of Australian culture and indeed Australian pride as well.
A birdie putt by Justin Thomas from just outside 20 feet gave the American a playoff win over Andrew Novak at the RBC Heritage.
Is it the winning putt? Here it comes! Yes, it is! Justin Thomas back in the winner's circle.
It's his first win since the PGA Championship in May 2022. Thomas closed with a bogey-free 68 at Harbour Town, and Mackenzie Hughes of Hamilton, Ontario, finished in a four-way tie for third, 3 shots back of the winner. The United States wrestled the gold medal back from Canada at the Women's World Hockey Championship with a 4-3 overtime win in Sunday's final in Czech Republic.
And here for Heisey, her shot, she scores! Tessa Janicki, your golden hero in Czechia.
The U.S. scored in overtime and claimed its second world title in 3 years after beating host Canada in the 2023 final in Brampton, Ontario. The Americans earned an 11th gold medal behind Canada with 13. It was the 10th final between Canada and the U.S. to go to overtime or a shootout. And for the first time since 2007, round 1 of the NHL playoffs kicked off for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators in the Battle of Ontario. Mitch Marner had a goal and 2 assists as the Leafs beat the Ottawa Senators in Game 1. This marked the first time in 3 years and 4 series the Toronto Maple Leafs won Game 1 of a playoff series. Leafs captain John Tavares spoke to the media about winning the series opener.
Battle, and we call it Battle of Ontario for a reason, so hard-fought game. I think there's obviously a lot of good things that we did, put us ourselves in a good spot and get the result we want. So, but we know we still can be a lot better, and as the series develops, have to continue to improve our game and execute and look at the things that we did well.
I'm Teresa Skubik, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. For more news on demand, you can always visit our website at forumdailynews.ca. Good night, Canada.